Okay, we're on at 1 o'clock and waiting for.
I did say that, though.
Yeah, I know you did.
Ruth,
Oh, here's
There
one.
it is.
Ruth lectured us the whole time.
Come on. Okay.
And you let Keagan beat you. It was a Big Ten versus Pac-12 challenge, and Keagan caught on first.
All right. All right, we're ready to go live. Here we go. Hello, my name is Ruth Nelson, and welcome to this week's Master Coaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz and our after show Buzz Reaction, both hosted by John Foreman. Our most recent guest, Beth Lanier, Utah head coach, discusses her release of her new book, Stop Competing and Start Winning. The book goes into detail on how she's conducted a successful program over the past 31 years. You also got a chance to hear about the AVCA 2020 virtual convention and why she thinks it's critical for coaches at all levels to register. Take a listen by going to our Instagram account and click on our bio, and that'll take you to our YouTube channel. Our news flash. Please note that you'll see displayed on our screen during our show today the following Master Coaches AVCA code 2020 MASTCH. We will provide all the details on this special offer at the end of our show and our after show Buzz Reaction. Do you have a holiday list? Well, you should. And at the top of your list should be register today for the AVCA virtual convention. And next on your list is book your Master Coaches winter and spring virtual clinics today for you, your fellow coaches, or your team. Please head over to Instagram, VB Master Coaches, click on the bio, and click on the virtual clinic link that will take you directly to all the information. Did you know today, former Long Beach State three-time national championship head coach Brian Jim Malero, former Texas and USC four-time national championship head coach Mick Haley, and head men's coach at Sacred Heart University, Bob Bertucci, will be asking our guests why they chose to run for AVCA president, how this position affects the entire vision of our sport, and why it's critical for coaches at every level to give themselves a holiday gift by registering today for the AVCA convention. First, let's head over to Austin, Texas, where former Olympic coach Mick Haley will introduce today's special guest.
Well, I can do that pretty good, Ruth, but I need to also introduce you a little bit because Ruth Nelson is a former USA national team player and assistant coach and has coached 3 Division I schools to over 600 wins. So, Ruth, thank you for that nice lead into the show today. And we have 2 exceptionally good coaches, top collegiate coaches in the country joining us today in Mark Rosen at the University of Michigan and Keagan Cook from the University of Washington. Welcome, you guys. Glad to have you on.
Thanks, Mick. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is kind of exciting for me because both of you have decided to take some of your valuable time and give back to volleyball in the collegiate community as president. And I don't know if you're aware of the people are aware out there, but Ruth has put up a picture that I took off my wall, one that I valued greatly when the American Volleyball Coaches Association first started. The founders, Terry Liskevich and Andy Banikowski, got together and thought we really needed a coaches association. And I was working in Texas, which they thought was on the East Coast, but it's really in the Southwest. And they wanted to bring the country together. So they asked me if I'd consider being the first president. So honestly, I have a little background as to what you guys have been into and what you're getting into, Keagan. So it's really a pleasure to have you on the show. And before we start talking about why you're getting into that, though, can you give us a little bit of a rundown on this fall? It had to be one of the strangest experiences either of you have ever had. And can you tell us if you actually got anything accomplished since neither of your conferences played? It'd be kind of interesting to hear that. Mark, why don't you go first?
Yeah, it was very unprecedented just how this whole fall unfolded, and it started out where we're planning to have a season. We're starting practice with the season in mind, but it never felt like we were going to have a season. Like it just didn't feel like it was going to come together. And then when they pulled the plug on the season about a week into it, everything shifted. we actually were able to get some stuff done. We were able to get quite a bit of 20-hour sessions in where we did a lot of practice. It was obviously very different because we didn't have competitions to prepare for. And it was very inconsistent. 1 week we would have full numbers. The next week we would have limited numbers, or we could do them in small groups because of state ordinances. Our state ordinances were changing in terms of what we could do and couldn't do in larger small groups. So it was a little inconsistent that way, but I tell you, I give our players tremendous credit. They were very resilient. They just kind of went with the flow. Whatever we were able to do, they did. And I was just really proud of them and how they approached it. But I felt like we got a lot better, and we had 1 week left, and then a governor made another change in policy, and we had to stop things a little bit early. But when I talked to some of our counterparts, especially on the West Coast, I think we actually got pretty lucky and got a lot done compared to what some people were able to. So I'm going to feel blessed with what we got. I felt like we got to develop a little bit of leadership, develop a little bit of system within what we're going to do. And hopefully if we have a season in January, we're going to be a little more prepared than we would be otherwise. So again, I felt like we got some stuff done.
Yeah. And Keagan, state of Washington really got hammered. So did you get anything accomplished this fall?
Isn't that the question we always ask ourselves? It's a funny story. I had a chance to watch Michigan's practice. It accidentally got posted to our video service at one point. And I called Mark and said, "Team looks great. I'm not playing you this year." So that was a fun moment. His team looks great. We had a few more restrictions than most across the country, the biggest one being that we were not permitted to play along the net. That activity of blocking and hitting at each other was deemed a high-risk activity. And so you have to have stricter testing protocols in order to be allowed to do that. So we didn't block each other for an entire fall period. So it felt like the never-ending serve pass side out against three poor defenders back there. But, constraint can make you better, as you know. It forced us to spend our time in serve receive where we knew we needed to spend it. And coaches like me can easily get distracted by hitting and blocking. And so it forced us to be in that space. I don't think I've spent as much time as I have this fall on the values of our program, redefining them, making sure that they're understood by staff and students. And so we spent a significant amount of time doing some of that work that can also fall by the wayside when you're playing matches and you're in the heat of the moment. So we did what we could. We practiced flexibility in the highest regard. And I think eventually we'll look back on this time and be thankful for the work that we did.
Very good. Bob Bertucci had an interesting question. Bob, what did you want to throw at these guys?
Well, I think Ruth kind of alluded to it in her opening comments. And Keagan, maybe I'll start with you, all right? And then Mark can give us a little bit more wisdom to this question, all right? First is, what does the AVCA mean to you, all right? And, knowing how much time, it takes, for a coach to get everything done that they need to get done, going into a season and in a season, how do you feel like you can possibly, give up the time needed to be president of the association, of the AVCA? So it's kind of a two-part question, and then we'll let Mark handle it after you give it a shot.
Yeah, the strength of your question creates some doubt. You're scaring me a little bit. The AVCA to me just represents the never-ending learning process. It represents a commitment to continuing my own education, in the sport. That's one part. The other part would be a commitment to be part of something bigger than yourself. And those two things are two things, Bob, that I ask my athletes to do always. Hey, be part of something bigger than yourself. And hey, you better always be learning. And I had a little bit of a moment where I looked at myself and said, are you living those values? Are you practicing what you preach to these athletes on a daily basis? And so when the idea of potentially joining the AVCA and kind of a service role came up, it felt like an opportunity for me to walk the walk a little bit, to commit to continue my own education and to commit to being part of something bigger than yourself. There's a big trend right now, I think you guys can feel it, of, distrust or lack of popularity of large organizations, whether that's USA Volleyball or the NCAA, and I don't like that. It bothers me quite a bit. What makes sports special are when we come together in large groups and give it meaning. And so it's a little bit of a going against that trend that I see of individualism, you know, in our country and within our sport, trying to work against that. So a little convoluted there at the end, as coaches can often get, but that's kind of what it feels like to me. So.
And how about, you know, I know you haven't done this yet. All right. What do you think about the time commitment? How are you going to be able to balance all that has to be done to help run an association and still be able to do everything you need to do as a head coach?
Bob, ignorance is bliss. You make the time you don't have, are my answers to that. I don't know what I'm getting into, and that's been one of my guiding principles in my career is if I don't know how to do it, I say yes, and I jump in there, and I get knocked around a little bit, and I learn, and then I keep moving forward. So, again, you're creating more doubt in me. I'm going to have to call Kathy after this and get some more clarification on what we signed up for. But it always feels good to be at the edge of your ability, you know, and know that you're growing, maybe not in the moment, but at the end. So thanks, Bob. Mark, console me a little bit. Hopefully you're...
You know, I think we'll throw it to Mark and we'll get some more, you know, wisdom out of this. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, the reason I wanted to be involved, I've been on the board of directors for the AVCA in the past, quite a few years ago, and I've just had such a great experience in this profession. You know, I think it's been an unbelievable life to be a collegiate coach, and the AVCA had such a big part of that when I was a young coach, when I was in the middle of my career, here toward the end of my career. I just feel like the AVCA is such an important entity, and I wanted to be a part of that. And I grew up in a family. My dad was big into service organizations and being involved in things bigger than yourself, and so I felt like it was kind of my responsibility and my desire to give back and to be involved in more than just as a member or somebody who was taking from the association, but I wanted to be somebody who was giving to. And we talked a lot about that in our program of being producers or consumers. I wanted to be a producer and be involved. So it was interesting, though. The time is a factor because this is our profession, and we don't want to do anything that's going to hurt our job and our chance to be successful. That would be unfair to Michigan. That'd be unfair to my student athletes if I couldn't give them my all. But I think a couple of things really sold me on being able to do it and turned out to be true. One is I have an amazing staff. You know, my wife, Lisa, is our associate head coach. She's really, really good. And sometimes when I'm not around, it's probably better. But that certainly helped the process. But Kathy, I got to give Kathy all the credit in the AVCA. And this was, hopefully Keagan will step back from the cliff as I say this. Kathy makes it possible. You know, she does so much work behind the scenes. She does the heavy lifting. You know, we come in and help with some decisions, help with maybe some signatures, whatever we need to do. But Kathy was so good at putting together the framework of things that took the heavy lifting off of our plate. And I think she does that because, one, she's really, really talented and she's really good. But the other is she knows that that's the only way she's going to get coaches from high-level programs to do that, because they can't sacrifice their program and they can't sacrifice their job. So she makes it really possible to do that. And so Keagan, as long as Kathy's there, I give it a big thumbs up. But that'd be my number one priority, is make sure Kathy's there.
She's a past president too, Mark. So
yeah, she gets it. She knows what it is all about. But I just think, you know, I found both times that I was on the board of directors and I was worried about what the time it was going to be, I felt like I was a better coach because I was more informed about what was going on. I was more dialed into the issues going on, and I just really felt like my program benefited from it more than they suffered from it. So I'm a big fan of people getting involved in the organization, and again, I think Kathy's created a great structure for that to happen.
Well, I'm sure Keagan is happy to hear some of your words of wisdom there, Mark. I think Brian has a couple of things, you know, concerning issues and challenges, you know, moving forward. So I'm going to let him, you know, ask those questions.
Well, both of you, thank you for being on the show. Mark, I was at my doctor's office a few days ago, and a pharmaceutical saleswoman came up and said, "Do you know Mark Rosen?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I want you to know my niece played for him from California this year, and she had a great time. So if you see him, please tell him that, okay?" So I'm telling you. And with Keagan, I'm trying to figure out what the great quote you had. First, I can't even make fun of Ruth's opening statement about why would you possibly do this. because you had a great quote in here, edge of ability. And I always think I went over that edge as a coach before I realized I was over that edge, you know. So I like that quote. But anyway, let's talk about, Mark, let's go with you. And in what issues were you unable, or would you like to have gone further with while you were the president?
Yeah, I think that for me, when I came in, I sat down and really tried to reflect on what would I want to accomplish? What would I want to, in the time I have in the organization, what do I see as pressing issues within volleyball, within coaching that maybe I can help affect in some way? And two areas I came up with was one, the growth of men's volleyball. I think that's so critical in our sport right now. And I think it's critical for our women's side as well as the men's side. And so many of our coaches came from the men's side. My opportunity to play at Northridge really shaped me and helped me become where I am as a coach. And so I would want that next coach to have the opportunity to play on the men's side. So I felt that was really important. And then one that I really felt strongly about was coaching ethics. You know, I felt like we're at this turning point in our sport, whereas coaches get paid more, larger budgets, nicer facilities, all the things that we wish for, more TV, more exposure for our programs. Those are all great things, but with them come unintended consequences. And one of those consequences is the pressure to succeed, or you don't get to keep that job. And so all of a sudden, people start skirting the ethics a little bit, especially around recruiting and training. And so I felt like, hey, I want to try and affect that any way I can. And I see sports like, you know, let's use men's basketball as an example, where we all want to be where they're at in terms of salary and budgets and support. But do we want to be where they're at in terms of ethics and where their sport has gone in terms of coaching ethics? And I felt like, hey, let's really get on this and talk about it, and let's really focus on this. So for me, that was a big issue. I felt at times I became kind of perceived as the volleyball police or something, and people would call me with an issue. Oh, I heard this about so-and-so. And my answer was always, well, call your compliance office, talk to your compliance office, talk to your conference. I think we need to call each other out. Sadly, I think that's the only. So I called a lot of coaches when I heard things or saw things. I would just call them directly and say, let's have a conversation. They weren't easy conversations, but they were important conversations. And I think if we're going to talk to each other and call each other out on these things, then it allows us to be a little more mindful of what are we doing and where are we taking our sport. Because I think every time we do something as a coach that's a little shady or a little against those ethics, we're taking our entire profession down a road we don't want to be down. And sometimes you get down that road and you realize, oh, crap, we're down here. We're way down the road and we can't get back. And so I think those are the things I tried to focus on. But again, when you talk about is there things you'd like to accomplish more of? Absolutely. You know, we'd love to have more men's programs, but this COVID thing's not helping a ton. But I think that, you know, things like First Point and the groups that are working to make volleyball men's volleyball more attainable are working really hard to do that. And I've loved being a part of that. And same thing with the ethics. We'll never get to the perfect place, but I do think we've made progress in the last couple of years of trying to keep our sport maybe a little more sane in terms of what we're willing to do to get that recruit or to train our team and to stay within the guidelines.
And Keagan, I was really impressed with your statement as to why you're doing this. And what would you like to accomplish during your year, as an upcoming president? What would you like to see done by the time? What issues do you want to attack?
Oh, you know, I've been trying in recent weeks, and Mick knows this because I called him for just as many lessons as he could give me in a short amount of time. I have a huge education gap on the history of all of our organizations, whether it's the AVCA or the NCAA or USA Volleyball. In the midst of trying to get as good as I can at coaching, I haven't paid enough attention as a young coach to the history of our sport and where it started and where we've gotten. So I don't want to use my presidency as a time to continue that education. I think it's going to happen. The two places my mind goes are kind of the foundation of our sport and then the pinnacle, the foundation being the grassroots level, you know, and how do we make sure that experience is as great as it can be, that it is bringing in as many athletes as possible to play this sport at a young age and have a great experience. So that, and this being the second half, that the pinnacle of our sport is as good as it can be, whether that's our national team or a professional league or overseas opportunities, that have such a profound impact on people's lives, when they have those opportunities. Those are the two places my mind goes. And like I said, there's a big education gap that I've got to fill early on before I really expect to affect change. But if I can create some positive movement in those two spaces, it'll be time well spent.
We're going to thank you. And Ruth, we're going to go to you.
Wow, I cannot believe it. You guys have left me the most time ever to find questions. Keagan and Mark, you know what these guys do to me? They put the pressure on me to do things at the last minute, right? So I've definitely learned to adapt. And I'm going to go first to Mark, and I'm going to say, what is it that you could tell a first-year coach that's out there listening why they should sign up for the AVCA convention, and why is it important? And just be open up front. Those 100 hours at $2.49 sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, the two things I would say is, one is the opportunity to learn from the coaches that are on the slate this year is amazing. I mean, I looked at the lineup and it's amazing. I mean, Kathy knew that, hey, this is going to be a tougher sell being a virtual convention versus a live convention, and she knocked it out of the park in terms of who she got on the lineup to be able to teach. So I think from a learning perspective, as a young coach, I mean, I would go to every clinic I could go to. I would listen to every coach I could, if I had a chance to sit next to a Mick Haley or Brian Gimolaro and talk to them about the sport, it's a great opportunity. And so I think that's one where this is the best value you're ever going to get for the number of hours you can get in the coaching educational side of it. The other point I would make is a little different. It's a little more, a little deeper in terms of, I think it's an investment in your future in terms of the association. The AVCA is such a critical part of what we do. Like if I'm going to apply for a job, if I'm a guy, assistant coach applying for a job, I'm going to use things like, All-Americans that we've had on our team, or awards that we've gotten, or things that have accomplishments we've had. Almost all of those accomplishments are tied to the AVCA and them being the ones that honor those things, or any records that are out there. They're all, kind of governed by the AVCA. So we use this association in the growth of our profession and our growth individually in our profession. So if it doesn't exist, you're going to have a much tougher time in your path of this profession. So to me, we need the AVCA convention is the largest single resource maker we have for our association. It's how we make the money to operate this association. So we needed to succeed. We needed to do well in a crazy year like this. So I look at it, I had our entire staff sign up. Our school wouldn't pay for it because they went away from the professional development. And I found a way for our entire staff to sign up the convention because I felt like, I want them to have the learning opportunity, one, but two, I thought it was important for our association to have that support because, this is a lean year, but not every year is going to be lean. We're going to get back to that. And I want this association to be as strong as it's been in the past. So I think those are the two biggest reasons I would give of why you as a young or as an experienced coach should sign up. In some ways, more for the experienced coach who feels like, hey, I'm not going to get that much out of it from the sessions. Well, you've been getting a lot out of our association for a lot of years. This is a great way to give back, to keep this thing floating at a really high level.
Okay. All right. That's excellent. Thank you. All right, Keagan, don't feel like you're under pressure because this has got nothing to do with being president. This has to do with you recommending to all these young coaches what you feel.
Same question?
Oh, yes, absolutely. What would you give? What would you tell these first year? And also, let me ask you this. Sometimes it seems like there's either the high school, the coaches that say, no, I can't spend that money because I already have to do my high school association clinic. But the club coaches are saying, oh, I won the American League last year. I don't need to go because I already know all the information. How do you address those two areas of high school and club coaches? Because we know how important it is for college coaches.
Yeah, I spent the majority of my coaching career at the club level, 10 years kind of concurrently while I was at St. Mary's and coaching at night. And man, I would have saved myself a lot of distress and time if I had sought out some education from people who came before me. What comes to mind for me is you don't walk away from the AVCA a worse coach. When you have an open mind, when you allow new ideas, when you allow your own beliefs to be challenged, you either walk away with a stronger conviction in what you're doing, or something that you need to change that you've realized, thanks to the teachings of other coaches. So, I started going to conventions too late, and I regret it. I certainly do. I didn't invest in myself. I was certainly coaching feverishly, in my 20s, and I wish I had known what I know now. So, the funny story I remember is I think my first convention was maybe my first or second year as the head coach at Washington, when I'm pretty sure I lost Pac-12 Coach of the Year to Mick, but I won North Regional Coach of the Year because thankfully he wasn't in our region. And I was so excited by the convention. I was enjoying myself going to these educational sessions so much that I missed the awards banquet, and someone called me and said, they just said your name at the banquet. You're supposed to come get an award and talk. And I said, I'm in a class right now. I'm loving it, and ever since then, it's a can't miss event for me, just in terms of education. So, don't wait, invest in yourself. Mark made that point very clear,
Wow.
Hey, Ruth,
yeah.
Can I inject one quick thing here?
Yeah.
So guys, let me ask you this. Why do you think it's important? I'm assuming you agree with me. Why do you think it's important that these club and high school coaches become members? They can't always go to the convention because of travel costs and all of that stuff. But why is it so important that every volleyball person in this country become a member of the association, in your opinion?
I think two things. One is the resources available to them. When you're a member of the AVCA, the resources are, whether it's being in a mentorship program or a mentee in a mentorship program, whether it's videos that are available, whether it's just the interaction and the connection. But the other is to make our sport strong. The stronger association we have, the bigger group we have of professionals, whether you're a club professional, a high school professional, a collegiate, you're all professionals. That's going to make our association that much stronger, which makes us individually stronger if we have a collective strength. So that's my opinion.
Okay.
It's worth the investment without a question, right?
Oh, without question. And to me, it's a very small investment comparative to what you get. I think it's an extremely affordable opportunity for you to make your profession and make yourself better at your profession.
Okay, Mick, I'm actually going back to you right now.
Well, I was going to ask Keagan if he had anything to add to that, but
people think about the AVCA and they think about networking and that it may lead to a new opportunity. There's lots of club coaches who aspire to coach at the next level. But the most important network to me that the AVCA has given me is just a network of information. The people I can call, that I've met through the AVCA, whether that's through the convention, through mentorship programs, that network is so important to me, just to be able to say, hey, have you ever experienced this before? Am I screwing it up? And oftentimes they say, no, it comes with the territory and here's what you do. So that's what's been of tremendous value to me.
And I think it's all of our expectations for all these young assistant coaches and the club coaches and the high school coaches to become members because of all the things that everybody has gone through to get the association to this point, to get our sport to be the most fast-growing sport in the country, both men and women. Women's volleyball is now, I believe, number one in women's participations, and men's volleyball is just going out of sight in participations. It is so important that you become a member, and I know that's hard to give up that money for just a membership, but you will appreciate it in the long run, and the people you deal with will be great. So guys, thanks so much for being on the show. Thanks so much for taking responsibility above and beyond your own programs to become part of AVCA's administration and leadership. We have 3 AVCA All-American Hall of Fame members on this call right now. And I'm sure you guys are moving in that direction very quickly. And Mark, I didn't think you were close to the end of your career. I thought you were still a young coach. I'm not so sure I had that.
Well, I realized that Keagan recently got married, and I coached his wife's mom. Let's put it that way. So,
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it goes.
Yeah, don't admit that. You got to realize you never admit those things.
I'll embrace my age.
Yeah.
Yeah, done that. Well,
Yeah,
for
we've all
everybody
done
else,
that, by the way.
we want to thank Mark and Keagan for being on. Really appreciate that. Tell the folks what's going to happen in the future. This is our last show for this year, and we're excited. Ruth, how many did we do? 42 shows?
33 weeks 33. In a row.
Yeah, that's the way I took the statistics too.
No, we did 43 Monday night preps. We did 43 of preps.
Yeah, so it's been a wonderful year, and we've gotten such great response that we will be back. The 13th of January will be our next show. But all four of us will be presenting this next week at the AVCA virtual convention. We're excited about that. We've got 4 or 5 presentations that all of us are participating in at one time or another. And we're totally sold on everybody coming to this convention. We're excited because we're going to hear some things from people that we've watched perform internationally as well as nationally and at the high school level. So that's good. But that's what's happening. And if you like it, let us know. We've tried to be not only informative, but entertaining. Sometimes that's flopped, but informative we've done a pretty good job with. So Ruth, it's back to you, and we'll get to the weekly buzz.
Okay. Keagan and Mark, this is always our marketing ploy here. So you can either stay on and listen to us, or you can actually go back and start planning for your college and your presentations for the AVCA convention. But here we go. Our weekly buzz shows are on YouTube, and you may access these by going directly to our Instagram account. Click on the bio and enjoy listening to leaders in our sport like Mark and Keagan address current issues and trends. Follow us on Facebook, Volleyball Master Coaches, Instagram and Twitter, VB Master Coaches. A special shout out to our partners, SNA Sports and Baden Sports, and thanks to our content providers, NFHS, JVA, Coaches Insider, and the AVCA. You may still register for the 2020 AVCA Virtual Convention by using the code 2020 MASTCH, which you'll receive the AVCA member early bird rate of $249, which is a $50 savings for the AVCA members and $150 savings for non-members. And this will provide you over 100 hours of virtual sessions. Sign up today by going to our avcaconvention.org and be sure to put in your 2020 MASTCH code and get your discounted rates. Now, we have a very, very special shout out to all of those coaches and guests that we've had on. For 42 guests that we've had that continue to pay it forward. We want to say thanks to all of you, and also for 33 weeks for having such a great learning environment for our viewers and our master coaches. We look forward to seeing all of you next week at the AVCA convention. Stay on Facebook Live after a host closes our show today and join our master coaches Buzz Reaction for an opportunity to hear and engage in our most recent talks. Now, let's go to our host, John Foreman, who will update us on his podcast series.
Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Keagan, as well, for coming on. We've already got somebody in the chat saying happy holidays to everybody. So that'll be a first announcement for everybody. Coming up on the podcast is actually the second episode of a two-parter in terms of some volleyball history talk with Sue Kazansky and Mark Lebedew. I can say that Ruth Nelson has already listened to at least part of it, and it's motivated her to grab a couple of people and come on and do some future episodes where we talk about more of the history. So we're looking forward to that. Coming up in the future, I actually just recorded yesterday a discussion of learning to use data volley. So that's will be coming out in the next week or so. So that should be pretty interesting. So with that, we'll wrap up the buzz and we'll move on to the reaction.
Well, thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks,
Keagan.
guys.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Keagan.
Mark.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.